because life changes, right? I mean, for example, a guy, he's 18 years old and gets "I love Sue" on his arm, and then he marries Pam, and he's got to live with Sue on his arm, Or how many of you know we get older and that big buff muscle kind of goes and things sag and wrinkle and it doesn't quite look the same and the L's look like J's and, life just, things change, all right? That's all I got to say about that one. But anyways, that would probably be what they would say. A person that is not against it said, no, there's no big deal. They would take you to that same chapter, and they would say, well, there's a couple things that we don't do today in that chapter. For example, Leviticus 19:19 says, do not plant your field with two kinds of seed, which that happens. Do not wear clothing woven with two kinds of material. We do that all the time, right? Cotton and polyester or whatever. Many of our shirts today probably have more than one fabric in it. Leviticus 27, they might take you to that verse and say, to men, do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. If you ever seen an Orthodox Jewish man, his hair is cut short here, he's got these big long things hanging. I can see a lot of young men that are going to hell today because you don't have that. All right? So obviously, they would look to that and say, this just doesn't make sense. And the reason why they can do that is because we are not under the ceremonial law of the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we don't live under those dietary laws and some of those things that were in the Old Testament. We are not under that law. In fact, one of the debates that went on in the New Testament church in the book of Acts was Paul got all up in some of the leaders' grills. Okay, that's my modern day young way of saying it. Got up in their grill. Anyways, and told them, listen, because the Jewish people that were becoming Christians were trying to put the law on these new believers. They're like, wait, stop. You're putting a yoke on them you couldn't even keep, okay? So the New Testament teaches we're not under those ceremonial laws of the Old Testament. But what was God trying to do? God, in those laws, was trying to keep a people for himself. He had the Jewish nation, and he was trying to keep them for himself. And so he gave them certain laws and ways of living that made them separate. For example, many of the dietary laws were obviously because he wanted them to worship them through their eating. We're not under those laws anymore either. But also he was trying to keep them healthy, because some of the stuff back in those days that you ate, they didn't have ways of refrigerating and caring for food that we have today. And many of those things they were eating were making them sick. So he was trying to help them. And when it came to tattooing, the reason why he said that, because back in those ancient times, one of the ways they would worship false gods was through cutting themselves and through tattooing their bodies. It was a way of worshiping Satan and worshiping these false gods. So that was why in the Old Testament God went that way. And the principle we can learn from those laws, there's always principles that we can learn from, and that is idolatry. Idolatry is wrong. So people were going to put me back in the hot seat and say, okay, Pastor Matt, where are you? What's your opinion? And it is only my opinion. If you are under the age of 18 and you live in your parents' home, you eat their food, you sleep in their on the bed that they purchased for you, you drive their car, my advice is you do whatever they say. All right? I agree with your parents, okay? If you're above the age of 18 and you have good reasons for giving yourself a tattoo and it's meaningful for you and you feel good about it, then by all means, that's completely up to you. I'm very indifferent when it comes to tattooing. It's whatever somebody does. Now, if I got a tattoo, I would get a big blue M on my arm right here. How about them Wolverines yesterday? Shoelace win.
Okay, I don't think
The Bucks won. The Bucks won.